Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. 4 reasons why silver could explode soon. Let's explore. What do I mean by explode? Because typically that means a moonshot or skyrocketing silver prices. That's exactly what I mean. There are scenarios that could play out in silver's favor this year, and these 4 reasons are going to potentially be the catalyst that could send silver prices soaring. Now, does that mean that they will if these things occur? Not necessarily, but it's a possibility. And I think it's good to be open to that possibility. But even if it does happen, there is something we must be mindful of. And I'll get to that momentarily in the video. Silver has not performed very well over the course of last year, and maybe even some in 2020 as we rounded out that year. We did see it more than double as it took a nosedive in the paper markets back in March of 2020. And that is another thing I'm going to be referring to here as well, because when you look at spot price, essentially that is the paper price. That is the price that metals are traded, and we know that there has been a divergence between spot price and the physical price of the metal. That divergence is recognized when we go to sell our precious metals and get more than spot for them. Because most generic silver or bars and that type of thing, if you were to sell these back at your local coin shop or an online dealer, they're going to give you a percentage under spot for it. These days, they're paying marginally above spot for it. So it's a slight divergence. Now, the gap between the amount they pay as to opposed to what you pay for the metal is wider, I believe, than ever before in most cases. But nonetheless, that divergence is seen when you go to sell your precious metals. But keeping that in mind, I believe we could see the spot price of silver shoot up based off of these 4 reasons. So the first reason is industrial usage, and as well as the environmental, social, and governance platform, or essentially that is the motivating factor for industrial usage and transition into green energy. That environmental aspect of it is something that it works both in the private sector and, of course, what policymakers are deciding as well. Social and governance essentially means that you're going to see silver more likely utilized in some of these components to meet social demand, as well as governance by a regulation. Some of that regulation, that ESG, is you hear that acronym used a lot, especially in relation to monetary policy more these days with modern monetary theorists, as well as with this new great reset that they're talking about doing that's already underway. The Davos Economic Forum is going to be postponed now, but they're going to be talking more and more about this, and with central bank digital currencies. They're going to tie the social order to essentially the new versions of money that are coming out derived off of the blockchain, or some sort of a system that is tracked. And they're going to track it based off of your social integration and social governance. Kind of scary when you think about it. And that is going to be bullish, I believe, for physical silver. And I think that's going to potentially cause the price of silver to go up, especially in the physical form, and that we could potentially see happen there. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the coming months as we see the Federal Reserve begin to do its thing, and there's more and more talk about some of these forums, and when they have their meetings about it, what goes out. Some of those will be public, and they've been openly talking about this in public for quite some time now. So industrial usage will increase for silver as well, regardless of the ESG aspect of it. About 50% of silver's total demand comes from industrial applications. 30% comes from jewelry, silverware, and then, of course, coins and metal manufacturing. The industrial demand for silver is rising, and, of course, we see it with green energy and solar panels especially, and electric vehicles. A growth in the global solar PV industry, a likely rebound in global computer shipments, as well as new sources of demand for sensors used in the Internet of Things, are providing a boost to silver demand. And a lot of this certainly is contingent on the supply chains. I believe the supply chains will essentially not necessarily get back to 100%, but I believe you're going to see them normalize at least to some point. Maybe not to where it was before the pandemic, but better than they were in the past year and a half. We shall see. Then, although this next reason very well maybe should be lumped in with industrial and ESG, however, I believe it is a big enough aspect of this thing that it is its own reason why silver could go up in price. The recent emergence and rollout of 5G globally is another positive for silver. That's something they are going to definitely be pushing. There's broadband initiatives out there in local governments and state governments and the federal government, as well as around the world. And this is something that is emerging and growing, and we're going to see silver's role in electronic applications used in 5G, and it is forecast to rise significantly to approximately 16 million ounces by 2025, and as much as 23 million ounces by 2030, which would mark a 206% rise from the current level based off of a report from the Silver Institute. And that is a incredible amount of demand just in 5G rollout. And the third reason, I think, is something that should be obvious, but I think it's something to recognize, and that is headroom. The headroom, meaning that silver is cheaper compared to other metals. It's got the best chance to rise in 2022, from according to an expert at Gainesville Coins. It's so cheap relative to other metals and other commodities, and it figures prominently in emerging technologies and green energy. It's a perfect storm for silver to break out, and maybe this year, especially after it really lagged gold these past few years. And that's just it. Headroom is an important aspect of it. Room to grow. Undervalued. Many people feel silver is. I feel it's undervalued. I'm going to be giving my prediction for silver soon. But no matter what, many people feel it's high time the silver breaks out and catches up with gold because of these things. And so when you take into account the gold to silver ratio, which is hovering around 80-1, it's no question that people are jaded and feel frustrated that silver is not performing on par with and surpassing gold when the prices rise. And I think that's just it. It's going to take a few times for gold to go up and on a consistent basis in order for silver to surpass gold. But I believe it will because of that headroom. Volatility is the key aspect to what keeps silver down because it is seen as a dual metal. And so it plays off, it reacts a little differently than gold in that regard. It tends to fall more when gold goes down, and it tends to rise more when gold goes up. Finally, the fourth reason why silver could explode soon is because of a supply deficit coming. You've heard me talk about in a recent video the coming shortage of silver. Well, that's what's predicted, according to the Silver Institute. They forecast a supply deficit for the physical silver market in 2022. According to a research report from WisdomTree, it reveals that capital expenditure in the mining industry has been low due to the pandemic, which should tighten the supply of silver for this year. So there's other factors of of tightening up supply other than just what is able to be pulled out of the ground as a primary metal and as a secondary metal, secondary to other metals that are mined. It's not that there's a shortage of silver itself that could be mined, but given that capital expenditures in the mining industry has been low, it's going to take them for a while to recover from that. And of course, the other reasons why the mining sector has been struggling, especially for silver as of late, due to the pandemic, means that getting silver out of the ground may be tougher, and which means that the physical above ground silver supply may tighten enough to cause prices to go up, but not so tight as to cause a panic. So that is the difference. That is kind of the four things that we could see the prices explode. Now let me kind of define what explode means and then give you a little bit of a cautionary tale, so to speak, or a little disclaimer as to what to watch out for if prices do go up. To me, exploding means rising above $30 an ounce to where we are at right now. A big jump in a month or two, by that much, by $7, $8 or more, maybe even $10 in a month. To me, that would be an explosion of prices to where they are now, especially considering how lackluster silver has performed recently. So it's somewhat of a low bar. Obviously, exploding silver is a great move very quickly in an amount of time, and I think $7, $8 move in a month or a month or even 2 months, I believe is a pretty good indication of what exploding means. Now, if it does jump up very quickly, then we must be careful not to get too cocky over this. In other words, silver has a tendency to humble us very quickly when it moves up too quickly. The volatility is something that cannot be ignored when it comes to silver. And that, if you keep that in mind, realize that if silver were to climb up $4 in 2 weeks, we very well could see it plunge right back down to where it is now and even lower. Don't underestimate that when it comes to silver. And I think we'd be much better off to see a sustained growth. That explosion will still occur, but over the course of a couple of months, seeing it come to fruition would give us some confidence that we're not going to see the price levels of $22, $23 for quite a while if it rises steadily in the next couple of months. But I could be wrong about that too. Either way, a bullish market for silver is something that is somewhat fragile, and you must keep that in mind. We must humble ourselves before these markets because they are unforgiving. We must be able to absorb that in the markets. So there you have it. Let me know what your thoughts are about these 4 reasons why silver could explode soon. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch and to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.